He had never lost a fight in his life, and he knew it. 6 feet 6 inches tall, 260 pounds of pure muscle, and he had just chosen Mike Tyson. But the moment that door clicked shut behind them both, every inmate pressed against the walls already knew. Only one man was walking out of that shower block the same way. He walked in. This is the story nobody inside that prison ever forgot and nobody outside ever heard. If you want the full story, hit subscribe because we drop these every single day. It was a Tuesday morning in the spring of 1993, 14 months into Mike Tyson's sentence at the Indiana Youth Center. The facility had settled into its rhythms by then. The guards knew their routines. The inmates knew their places. And Mike Tyson, former undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, had carved out a quiet existence inside those concrete walls. He trained every morning before breakfast. He read in his cell every evening after dinner. He kept to himself, minded his business, and did his time the way a man does when he has decided that the only fight worth having is the one that gets him back outside those gates. But prisons are living things. They breathe and shift and change without warning. And on that Tuesday morning, the Indiana Youth Center received a transfer that would change the atmosphere of the entire facility within 48 hours of his arrival. His name was Cole. Nobody used his first name, just Cole. He had come from a maximum security facility 2 states over, transferred for reasons that the administration never fully explained to the general population. He was 29 years old, stood 6 feet 6 inches tall, and carried 260 pounds on a frame that looked like it had been constructed specifically for the purpose of intimidating other human beings. His arms were thick and corded with muscle. His shoulders were wide enough that he had to turn slightly sideways to pass through standard doorways comfortably. He had a jaw like a slab of concrete and eyes that carried the flat, measuring look of a man who had spent years inside facilities exactly like this one and had learned to treat every new environment as a problem to be solved. Cole had a reputation that arrived before he did. Word travels fast inside prison walls, faster than mail, faster than phone calls. By the time Cole walked through intake on that Tuesday morning, half of Cell Block D already knew his name, and the other half had heard enough second-hand information to be cautious. He had never lost a fight, not once. Not in any facility he had ever been housed in, and he had been in 4 of them. That was the thing people said about Cole when they talked about him. Not that he was dangerous, though he was. Not that he was violent, though he could be. Just that simple, cold fact: he had never lost. Mike Tyson heard about Cole the same way everyone else did. Through Carlos, his cellmate, who collected information about the facility the way some men collected books or exercise routines. Carlos mentioned Cole casually over lunch on that first day, the way you might mention a change in the weather. New transfer came in this morning, big man, real big, got a reputation. Mike had nodded and gone back to his food. He had heard descriptions like that before. The prison system produced men with reputations the way factories produced goods. It was simply part of the environment. What Mike did not know, what none of them knew on that first day, was that Cole had made a decision before he even set foot inside the Indiana Youth Center. He had heard about Mike Tyson being housed there, heard about the respect Mike had earned, the quiet authority he carried without seeking it, and Cole had decided, with the particular cold logic of a man who had built his entire identity around being the most feared person in any room he entered, that Mike Tyson represented a problem. Not a personal problem, a professional one. If Mike Tyson was the name people said with that particular weight in their voices, then Cole needed to change that. It was simply how the hierarchy worked. It was the only math Cole had ever trusted. The first 2 days passed without incident. Cole observed. He ate his meals, assessed the facility, identified the power structures, and watched Mike Tyson from a distance with the patient. Deliberate attention of someone doing reconnaissance. Mike noticed him the way you notice a change in pressure before a storm. You cannot point to the exact moment you became aware of it. You just find yourself aware. On the third morning, the shower block at the east end of cell block D was at its quietest, just after the 6:30 bell, when most inmates had already cycled through and only a handful remained. Mike had developed a habit of going slightly later than the main rush, preferring the relative quiet of an emptier room. He had learned early that crowded spaces in prison were spaces where things went wrong. He was near the back of the shower block when Cole walked in. The timing was not accidental. Cole had been tracking Mike's routine for 2 days, and he had chosen this moment deliberately. 3 other inmates were still present, finishing up near the entrance. They took one look at Cole's face as he walked in and found reasons to leave very quickly. Within 90 seconds, the shower block held 3 people, Cole, Mike, and Marcus, a quiet man doing time for fraud who had unfortunately chosen that particular morning to take his time, and who would later describe what he witnessed to every single person who asked him about it for the remainder of his sentence. Cole stopped 10 feet from Mike and crossed his arms. The gesture was unhurried, deliberate, carrying the weight of a man who had rehearsed this moment in his mind and found himself satisfied with how it was unfolding. He looked Mike up and down the way you look at something you are deciding whether to move or simply step over. "You are smaller than I thought," Cole said. His voice was level, conversational almost, which somehow made it worse. Mike turned and looked at him. He said nothing. His expression did not change. He had been in enough rooms with enough dangerous men to know that the first words spoken were almost never the real message. You waited. You listened. You let the other man show you exactly what he was. Cole took one step closer. "I heard about you," he said. "Heard you are somebody around here. Heard people leave you alone out of respect." He paused. "I do not leave anybody alone out of respect." Mike reached for his towel from the hook on the wall beside him. His movements were slow and deliberate. "I am not looking for trouble," Mike said. "I never am." Cole smiled at that. Not a warm smile. The kind of smile that functions as a signal rather than an expression. "That is the problem," he said. "Because trouble has been looking for you since the day I got here." Marcus, standing near the entrance pretending to search for something in his kit bag, would later say that what happened in the next 4 minutes was the quietest confrontation he had ever witnessed in his life. No shouting, no crowd, no performance, just 2 men in a concrete room, one of them trying to establish something, and one of them deciding how much of himself to spend on the response. Mike set his towel down. He turned to face Cole fully, and something shifted in his posture. Nothing dramatic, nothing telegraphed. But Marcus said afterward that it was like watching a different kind of stillness settle into the room, the way the air changes just before lightning rather than just before rain. "I have heard about you too," Mike said. His voice was quiet. Every word landed clean and flat, without decoration. "You have never lost. That is what they say, and I believe it. Men like you do not get that kind of reputation without earning it." Cole said nothing. He was listening now despite himself. "But here is what I know about never losing," Mike continued. "It means you have never been in a room with someone who hits harder than fear." He let that settle for a moment. "You have been the scariest thing in every room you have ever been in. That is a real thing. I am not taking that from you. But it also means you have been making decisions based on information that is about to change." The silence that followed lasted perhaps 5 seconds, long enough to mean something. Cole moved. Not a full charge, not reckless. A controlled, powerful step forward with his right hand already coming up. The kind of movement that had ended every previous confrontation in his life before the other man had time to properly react. Mike was no longer where he had been. The slip was small, almost invisible. The product of 20 years of training at a level Cole had never encountered and could not have prepared for. The counter that followed was compact and precise. 2 movements. The first removed the threat, the second made a statement. Cole found the wall. His legs held him, but only just. The room rang with a silence so complete that Marcus would describe it years later as the loudest thing he had ever heard. Mike picked up his towel from the floor where it had fallen. He looked at Cole for a long moment. Then he walked to the door. He stopped in the doorway without turning around. "I have been in here long enough," Mike said quietly, "to know that this conversation never happened. That is good for both of us." Then he was gone. Marcus never forgot what he saw that morning, and he never stopped telling the story, though he told it carefully and only to people he trusted. What stayed with him was not the ending, not the moment Cole met the wall. What stayed with him was the moment just before, when Mike Tyson set his towel down and turned, and the entire temperature of that concrete room changed without a single word being spoken. Marcus had seen violence in prison before. He had seen big men fight, and small men fight, and desperate men fight. But he had never seen anything like that stillness, that particular quality of calm that is not the absence of danger, but the complete mastery of it. He said once, years after he got out, that he finally understood something in that shower block that he had spent his whole life getting wrong. Real power is not the thing that announces itself. It is the thing that does not need to. If this story hit different, you already know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, because we drop a brand new story every single day. These are the moments that happened behind closed doors, inside facilities where cameras did not reach and newspapers never asked. The stories that traveled through prison systems on whispers, from cell block to cell block, facility to facility, because some things are too real to stay contained. Mike Tyson spent 3 years inside those walls, and in 3 years, a man who had already seen everything the world could throw at him learned something new every single week. We are just getting started. Subscribe and do not miss a single one.